Bro, you just had to unsheath this rusted blade to win, but you've been pulling at it for 10 years, and still nothing. So, you've been rotting away at the back of the sect every single day, stuck in the same pulling posture. Everyone in the sect thinks you've completely lost your marbles, acting like the former genius is now just a total clown. But these NPCs have no clue that you've only unsheathed that sword halfway, and your cultivation level has already surpassed the sect ancestor. Today, your holy maiden fiancé, who you haven't seen in forever, decides to grace you with her presence. Our engagement is officially dead. We're clearly not from the same world anymore. If it wasn't for your dad's last request, you wouldn't even have the credentials to stay in the sword sect. You know the score, but you just smirk. She's clearly itching to cut ties as fast as possible. Seems like you've already got a new simp on the side, huh? I'm only here to tell you that the engagement is trashed, and keep your mouth shut about our past. If I hear even a whisper of gossip, don't blame me for being ruthless. You just watch her walk away with a totally chill expression. Dad, you wanted me to protect Piao Piao, but it looks like she doesn't need me anymore. All these years, every time the sword sect faced a crisis or Qin Piao Piao got into trouble, a mysterious sword cultivator popped up to save the day. That mysterious guy is literally you. The sect calls you the Nameless Sword God while you're busy grinding out this sword pull. But not long after Qin Piao Piao dips, the sect bells ring out 6 times. 6 rings mean a VIP is here, and the whole sect has to roll out the red carpet. Curious, you tap into your divine sense to see who the intruder is. Empress Fu Yao. Why is she showing up here? Empress Fu Yao is one of the 4 great beauties of the southern continent, and an absolute unit at the first stage of the martial saint realm. In the southern continent, she's basically a living legend who stays out of sect drama, spending 99% of her time in deep meditation. The only reason a big shot like her would visit the 10,000 Sword sect is obviously because she's hunting for you. A few years ago, the southern continent had that weird Heavenly Dog Eats the Moon event, and since the Empress's cultivation technique is super specific, her cultivation took a massive hit from the celestial disturbance, and she dropped down to the mortal level, which triggered a whole scheme from people trying to take her down. Luckily, you disguised yourself as the Nameless Sword God and bailed her out. But just as you finished the save and tried to bounce, she appeared out of nowhere. Her power suddenly skyrocketed, and she just casually snatched the mask right off your face. So you panicked and hit the emergency exit with a secret technique. But the Fuyao Empress still managed to catch a glimpse of your portrait. Word on the street is that the Fuyao Martial Saint has been hunting everywhere, desperately trying to track down the Nameless Sword God. It's gotten so bad that every time you throw down, you have to speedrun the fight, just to make sure the Fuyao Martial Saint doesn't track your aura. But did you just pull a classic shooting yourself in the foot moment? Your pupils shrink as the realization hits. You remember a month ago, after you wiped out the entire Long family, to keep your identity on the down low, you left a sword god mark right next to Long Hao's corpse. You thought that would be enough to intimidate the local fodder. But you completely forgot about this Fuyao Empress lady, who actually managed to track you down through that very mark. Looks like it's time to ghost everyone and lay low for a while, so you immediately activate your movement technique and vanish into thin air. Shortly after, the Fuyao Empress arrives at the 3rd peak, escorted by the sect master and the saintess. She follows the lingering sword intent straight to the back of the mountain. Does anyone even live out here? The sect master nervously stammers. This place is just where we keep some scrub disciple. The Fuyao Empress isn't buying that garbage, so she instantly blankets the entire back mountain with her terrifying divine sense. Nameless, I know you're in here. Can you please just come out and meet me for once? A legendary martial saint powerhouse is literally out here begging in front of everyone. The crowd is losing their minds, but the call gets 0 response. You seriously underestimated the Fuyao Empress's obsession, but you're not trying to be found today. Fine, then I'm just staying right here. Forget the disciples. Even the sect master is staring with his jaw on the floor, too terrified to speak. None of them suspect that the Nameless Sword God is actually you. They just assume the Sword God is hiding here, so they don't dare mess with the place. From a distance, you realize your identity is going to get exposed sooner or later, so you let out a bitter laugh, throw on a black cloak, and reluctantly head back to the back mountain. But the second you step out, a gasp echoes through the mountain, and the Fuyao Empress has eyes for absolutely no one but you. That single shout is enough to send the entire Wanjian sect into a full-blown meltdown. She rushes towards you like her life depends on it. I never got a proper chance to thank you for saving my life back then, my love. I am eternally grateful for your grace. I am willing to stay by your side as your servant just to repay you for saving my life. The fact that a legitimate martial saint just said that has everyone's jaws hitting the floor. A confession this down bad, and she's even willing to be a literal slave just to stay. Is this really the high and mighty Empress we know? But you haven't even said anything yet? Who would have thought Saintess Qin Piao Piao would actually speak up? Sword God Senior isn't some guy who just goes around doing whatever. Over these past few years, he's saved so many people, and every time I was in trouble, he was the one who pulled me out of it. Senior Fu Yao, the Sword God only saved you that one time. It was clearly just a coincidence. Qin Piao Piao gritted her teeth and stepped forward, shouting, Sword God Senior, I'm willing to stay by your side to study the Tao and serve you for the rest of my days. Hearing that, the sect master and the fourth peak master standing nearby were absolutely shook, rushing to stop her. Piao Piao, stop talking nonsense. They then scrambled to explain themselves to Fu Yao, but then you suddenly decided to drop a bombshell. So what about your fiancé then? The entire room went dead silent. The Fu family empress shot a cold glare at Qin Piao Piao. She didn't care about the confession. But what really ticked her off was that the Nameless Sword God didn't reject the girl immediately and actually started questioning things. Who does this chick think she is to get a reaction out of the Nameless Sword God? As for Qin Piao Piao, she was terrified out of her mind, but she decided to risk it all. She knew this was probably her only shot at a glow-up. With tears in her eyes, Qin Piao Piao choked out, Sword God Senior, you've got it all wrong. The engagement between me and that total loser was just some arrangement his dad made before he kicked the bucket. Not only is he absolute fodder with zero talent, but he's also got the worst personality and is lazy as hell. Just because his dad is the third peak master, he's been hogging over half the resources of the entire third peak, and after all these years, he's still stuck at the body refining stage. Not to mention he's a total bully who throws his weight around, and he's even tried to pull some shady moves on the female disciples. The guy is straight up subhuman trash. Qin Piao Piao was getting so worked up she was basically rambling at this point. Rest assured, Sword God I, Qin Piao Piao, swear on my own purity. The only thing that exists between us, the engagement's been cancelled anyway, so who cares? For years, I haven't had a single scrap of contact with that animal, and I didn't even let him touch my hand. There's literally nothing between us. There never was, there isn't now, and there sure as hell never will be. Qin Piao Piao's eyes were drowning in tears, her voice practically begging for mercy. But you just stood there, giving her absolutely nothing. Thinking back to the good old days, you and her were basically childhood sweethearts, despite the gap in cultivation talent, and things were actually chill between you two. But look at how this train wreck turned out. You took one look at Qin Piao Piao's pathetic state, felt a wave of icy coldness wash over you, and reached out to finally take off that mask. It's been 10 years, no point in hiding anymore. Aside from the Empress, everyone at Wanjian's sect was hyped, dying to see what kind of face was hiding under that mask. But just as the mask was about to come off, some random drama had to pop up. A terrifying dragon's roar suddenly shook the entire Wanjian sect to its core. Listen up, you nameless dog. Get your ass out here and die. I swear on my life that today, I'm grinding your bones into dust. And if Wanjian sect dares to harbor this rat, I'll wipe your entire sect off the map. The great elder of Tianchong sect, Hu Yanji, showed up swinging an execution decree like he was the main character. The sect master and the four peak masters of Wanjian sect felt their hearts drop into their stomachs. It's clear Tiankong sect is ready to go nuclear and burn every bridge in sight, because being on that execution decree means you're marked for death. No exceptions, no mercy. Since Tiankong sect is the biggest powerhouse in the southern continent, all the local bootlickers are already lining up to follow their orders. Seeing the sect master shaking in his boots, you just stepped up and said, let's go, I'm the one who caused this mess, so I'll be the one to deal with it. In no time, all the big shots of Wanjian sect were crowded in the plaza. Hu Yanji touched down with his disciples, giving everyone the side-eye like they were absolute trash. Wanjian sect, where'd you get the audacity to act like this? You actually dared to cripple my prize student? Hand over Wu Ming, and maybe I'll consider letting the rest of you losers live. The disrespect was real. He didn't even acknowledge them, mostly because the power gap between the two sects is just that massive. The Wanjian sect master was sweating bullets. Senior Hu, your student was on a path of invincibility and challenged everyone to a duel. If he got clapped, that's on him, not us. Smack! Hu Yanji let his hand fly, leaving a bright red handprint across the sect master's face. A trash-tier Ningqiao realm scrub thinks he can talk to me? Get out of my face. The absolute humiliation was deafening, but the sect master just held his face and retreated into the shadows. Meanwhile, the other peak masters of the Wanjian sect are literally too terrified to even breathe. I mean, can you blame them? The guy standing in front of them is a straight-up Saint Realm existence. Empress Fu Yao glances at the Wanjian sect crowd and gives a cold, disappointed headshake. She's honestly confused why a legend like Wu Ming is hanging out in a mid-sect like this. Your Wanjian sect is acting real bold today, aren't you? Hu Yanji is a martial saint himself, so he obviously recognizes exactly who the lady in front of him is. Fu Yao, I'm not here to settle scores for my disciple today. I'm here to dish out some heavenly justice. A few days ago, that Wu Ming sword god went rogue and slaughtered the entire Long family. Plus, he massacred thousands of lives in a city for no reason. And if that wasn't embarrassing enough, he actually stooped low enough to bully a junior. Looking at that laundry list of crimes, it might as well just say, I'm framing this guy because I'm a petty loser. Everyone knows the Long family were absolute scum, and those thousands he wiped out were just straight-up demonic cultivators. As for picking on a junior, everyone conveniently forgets that you're a junior yourself. Seriously, offending a martial saint is definitely not a pro-gamer move. Even though you've carried this sect on your back, the sect master is folding under the pressure. Senior Huyan, whatever Wu Ming did, our Wenjian sect has absolutely nothing to do with it. When those words hit, you're triggered. If it weren't for the fact that you grew up here, you would ditched this place ages ago. Just based on the insults you've endured over the last few years, you would have turned this sect into dust already. With things reaching a dead end, Empress Fu Yao tells you to bail while she holds this clown back. 10 years of giving your life for the sect, and they're already dodging you like you're the plague. And look at Qin Piao Piao, the girl you secretly protected for 20 years, cowering in the corner like a total coward. Meanwhile, Empress Fu Yao, whom you only met once, is standing firmly in front of you. It's actually kind of tragic how real that hits. You walk up to Saint Fu Yao and wave her off. Relax, a washed-up martial saint isn't taking my life today. You let out a terrifying wave of pressure, and for a split second, you look like a god-tier blade capable of cleaving the world in half. Sword intent? How is that even possible? You're just a Ningqiao realm cultivator. How did you even grasp that? That's literally the kind of willpower only top-tier martial saints should be rocking. In a heartbeat, Hu Yanji decides this kid is too much of a freak talent. He needs to be erased like yesterday. He spots Empress Fu Yao hovering nearby, ready to jump into the fray. Hu Yanji immediately activates his Decree of Crime scroll, shooting a beam of light into the sky that materializes into glowing characters. That's the real terrifying power of the Decree of Crime, folks. Every sect in the southern continent, ancestors, elders, disciples, whoever, has to bow down when they see this thing. That is the raw, toxic influence of the #1 sect for you. Everyone in the Wanjian sect is shaking in their boots just looking at it. They were low-key blessed for making that call earlier. Suddenly, 2 massive auras descended from the sky. As these 2 appeared, the energy in the air started vibrating like crazy. Turns out both of them are total martial saint powerhouses. One of them is the legendary Xuanri martial saint from the North Continent, a 4th-tier martial saint, and the other is the Xuxiao martial saint from the West Continent. It's game over. My Wanjian sect is cooked, and the Sword God is definitely gonna die. My entire Wanjian sect is about to get wiped off the map. The whole Wanjian sect was basically a chaotic group chat of panic. Empress Fujia frowned hard, since both of these guys are stronger than her, and to make matters worse, they've both got massive sects backing them up, so even she was feeling a bit shaky. But then there's this guy who just shook his head when he saw them. Like, what a small world, huh? Hu Yanji looked totally smug while addressing the 2 martial saints. Back in the day, you 2 owed my Tianchong sect a massive favor. So I'm gonna need you senpeis to delete this absolute loser for us right now. If you take care of this, my Tianchong sect will pay you top dollar. But the second Hu Yanji finished talking, 2 loud slaps echoed across the entire sky. Hu Yanji and the whole crowd were standing there like, wait, what just happened? But the 2 martial saints didn't even look at the clown. They just walked straight up to this guy. The scene that followed left everyone in the arena absolutely shook. They watched as these 2 legendary martial saints bowed respectfully and said, "Long time no see, Brother Wu Ming, still looking as sharp as ever." Calling him brother while bowing like juniors. How is that even possible? What the hell is actually going on? Even with the facts right in front of them, their brains were struggling to process it. This whole situation is just straight up delusional. No need to be so formal, guys. He gestured for them to chill out and drop the act. Ever since Wudao Cliff, it's been 2 years and I couldn't find you guys. We had a date to drink and talk cultivation, and you guys ghosted me. That deserves a penalty. Hu Yanji was clutching his swollen red cheek, eyes basically bulging out of his skull, pointing at him while trembling. T2 seniors, are you guys sure this guy is a wanted demon on the Tianchong sect's hit list? And also some bottom feeder that the Wanjian sect kicked to the curb. How could he possibly be a brother to you 2? Hearing that, Xuanri Wusheng's face turned darker than a burnt piece of toast. He backhanded Hu Yanji so hard he went flying a few dozen meters away. Shut your dog shit mouth. Brother Wu Ming enlightened us back in the day at the Wudao Cliff, helping us both break through our cultivation bottlenecks. That kind of massive favor is basically being reborn as our parents. So how could I let a piece of trash like you talk? But Zhuxiao Wusheng let out a cold snort, lightning swirling around him, looking at Hu Yanji like he was already a dead man walking. You say he's a demon? I think your Tianchong sect is the real nest of demons here. Anyone who dares touch a single hair on Brother Wu Ming today is officially declaring war on my Zhuxiao Holy Land. The whole arena went dead silent, quiet enough to hear a pin drop, while you stood there looking totally unbothered. You turned around, your gaze scanning the crowd before locking onto Qin Piao Piao, whose face was as white as a sheet. Qin Piao Piao, your voice wasn't loud, but it rang crystal clear in everyone's ears. Qin Piao Piao started trembling all over, instinctively taking a half step back. No, you aren't him. You're the Wooming Sword God. You aren't that piece of trash. As she babbled that nonsense, you just gave a faint smile. A smile with 3 parts mockery and 7 parts pure chill. You just said that there's a difference between me and that trash like clouds versus mud. You said you never let that trash even touch you, but you'd willingly be a slave or a maid for the Wooming Sword God. You called me a beast who bullies others, while the Sword God is a hero who saves the world. You took a step forward with every single word you spat out. With every step you took, your aura kept stacking higher and higher. When you finally stopped less than 3 feet in front of Qin Piao Piao, you reached up and tapped the black gold mask hiding your face. The next second, a crisp cracking sound echoed out, and the mask that symbolized the identity of the Wooming Sword God turned into dust in your hand and vanished with the wind. In that exact moment, time itself seemed to freeze. Every person from the Wanjian sect recognized that face as the guy they'd been clowning on for the last 10 years. The one they treated like the sect's biggest stain, the idiot who spent every day doing chores at the back mountain, was somehow the same existence that even 2 martial saints had to call brother. No, this can't be real. Qin Piao Piao was straight up bawling her eyes out, reaching out to grab the hem of his robe. Scram, just one word, no cap. He didn't even use force, but an invisible sword aura erupted, sending Qin Piao Piao flying back several meters instantly, face planting hard into the dirt. From the moment he opened his mouth, her fiancé was officially dead. Now, only Wu Ming remained. With that clown dealt with, Wu Ming turned his gaze toward Huyanji, who was shaking like a leaf. 10 years ago, you enabled your disciples to steal the spirit veins of my 3rd peak. Last year, you were caught playing cozy with the demonic path, scheming against my father's old subordinates. 3 months ago, you sent hitmen after Qin Piao Piao. If I hadn't stepped in, she would have been some demon's cultivation battery by now. Time to settle all these debts. As he dropped each line, his aura kept stacking higher and higher. The Qingmu sword, which had been sealed for a decade, was suddenly in his hand out of nowhere. Golden light surged from the blade, literally making the heavens and earth tremble in fear. Huyanji finally realized in shock that the legendary Wooming Sword God was actually that same loser the whole sect had been roasting for 10 years. No way, that's impossible. You were clearly just at the condensing aperture realm. He didn't even get to finish his sentence before the sword aura blasted him away. His fancy robes shattered into confetti in the golden light, turning into dust floating everywhere. The sun-swallowing martial saint stepped on Huyanji, pinning him to the ground. Condensing aperture realm. Do you have any idea that the sword in my brother's hand is the ancient saint sword, Wu Wang? It took 1,000,000 sword sharpening sessions to temper the mind, and 10 years of solitude to master the sword Dao. Don't talk about martial saints, even a semi-immortal would have to show some respect. The whole arena went dead silent. The sect master of the 10,000 sword sect clutched his swollen face, green with regret. Qin Piao Piao slumped on the floor, staring at the sword in his hand as she finally remembered what he told her back when they were kids. Once I pull this sword out, I'll protect you for the rest of your life. Empress Fuyao's eyes sparkled like stars as she stepped forward and gently grabbed his dangling left hand. He looked at the crowd, all of them standing there like absolute NPCs. Then he looked at the Qingmu sword, finally fully unsheathed in his grip, and let out a chuckle. Actually, I could have pulled this out ages ago. I just thought it'd be hilarious to wait and see if you clowns ever figured out who the real idiot was. As soon as he finished, the sound of a sword hum echoed across the 9 heavens, and the barren 3rd peak suddenly bloomed with spirit herbs. The resources stolen back then were returned 100-fold to the loyal disciples who stayed behind. Then, he grabbed Fuyao's hand and walked off toward the back mountain. Let's go, we're gonna be late, and the swords back home are getting thirsty. The sun-swallowing martial saint was already waiting. He casually flipped his hand and pulled out 3 white jade wine bottles, still radiating an icy mist. The millennial ice nectar is ready, just waiting for the big shots to show up. Zhuxiao Wusheng laughed and added, I already set up a soundproof array around the back mountain, so no one's gonna dare to disturb our drinking and sword talk. Just as they reached the shack, they saw Qin Piao Piao stumbling after them, her dress caked in mud and her hair a total disaster. Senior Sword God, I know I messed up. Can you just give me one more chance? We literally grew up together. Did you already forget? You told me back then that you'd teach me your sword techniques. He didn't even break his stride, his voice calm and cold as ice. Stuff you say as a kid doesn't count as a real promise. Besides, the guy who taught you sword skills has been low-key protecting your back for the last 10 years. He flicked his finger, and a blade of sword intent sliced right past Qin Piao Piao's hair, dropping a blood-stained scrap of cloth to the floor. That was the piece of fabric he tore from his own sleeve to save her when those demonic cultivators jumped her. Qin Piao Piao stared at the torn cloth, her face pale as a ghost, finally realizing that those lucky saves were never just a coincidence. Before she could beg further, the Fujia Empress stepped in to block her path, her gaze icy and ready to drop anyone who moved. Did you actually think the Nameless Sword God was some kind of pushover? The moment she finished, a wave of pressure, gentle yet impossible to resist, shoved Qin Piao Piao back, making her too terrified to move another inch. Inside the shack, Xuanru Wusheng poured him a drink and asked, "Bro, why the hell did you go into hiding at the Wanjian sect all those years ago? With your god-tier skills, you could build your own sect anywhere in the world." He looked at the wooden sword branch swaying in the wind outside the window, let out a quiet chuckle, and said, "Before Linzhong died, my old man told me there was an ancient sword demon sealed under the third peak spirit vein, and it needed someone's sword intent to keep it suppressed 24/7. I wasn't slacking off on my training. I was just worried that if I went too hard, my leaked aura would wake the demon up." He swirled his wine, and as for hiding, I just wanted to see something. I wanted to see the true colors of this sect and these old friends once my dad wasn't around to protect me anymore. Zhu Xiao Wusheng clicked his tongue. Damn, no wonder you let those clowns disrespect you for 10 years. That sword demon already got deleted by the aura from my training session. He took a casual sip of wine. That one strike finally finished off 1,000 years of sealing. It's about time it got put out of its misery. As he was speaking, the voice of the Wanjian sect master, sounding like he was on the verge of tears. The Wooming Sword God's disciples are blind as bats and can't see talent when it's staring them in the face. Please, sir, have mercy and don't abandon our Wanjian sect. We'll save the third peak for you forever. Help yourself to all the resources you need. They're yours. The peak masters and a whole mob of disciples were down on their knees begging. Their wailing was so loud it literally shook the entire back mountain. Tuinot Marshal Saint frowned and was about to intervene, but our boy stopped him. Don't even waste your time on these clowns. He stood up, kicked the cottage door open, and cast a cold look at the crowd kneeling in the dirt. 10 years ago, when my father passed away, didn't you vultures cut off the third peak's resources? Did you ever think you'd end up crawling back like this? When Qin Piao Piao broke off the engagement, you all just watched like cold-blooded NPCs. Did you ever give a damn about loyalty? With a flick of his hand, the third peak's gate slammed shut, completely sealing itself off from the rest of the Wanjian sect. From this day forward, the third peak is now the Wuwang Sword sect. We have nothing to do with your trashy Wanjian sect anymore. As for you guys, you're on your own. The moment he finished, the mountain gate turned into a literal wall of swords, blocking out all the desperate begging. Qin Piao Piao stared at the sealed gate, finally collapsing to the ground with tears of regret streaming down her face. She finally realized that the man she threw away was the golden opportunity the entire cultivation world was dying for. Inside the cottage, Empress Fuyao raised her wine cup with a playful glint in her eyes. So, from now on, I'm officially part of the Wuwang Sword sect. How about we share a cup of wine under the stars? Not just that, you're the sect leader's wife now. Tuinot Marshal Saint and Chutiu Marshal Saint exchanged looks and burst out laughing. So does that make us the founding fathers? Do we get some elder titles or what? He chuckled and raised his cup. Forget just being elders. I'll hand over the entire management of the Wuwang Sword sect to you two. Their laughter echoed through the valley, while the Qingmu swords, silent for 10 years, hovered majestically over the mountain gate. A golden light erupted from the blade, bathing their new sanctuary in protective energy. Time flew by, and though the Wuwang Sword sect only occupied one mountain, it became the most respected place in all of Nanshu. Tunat and Chutiu, the two martial saints, stopped by all the time, sometimes bringing along rare treasures and mythical loot, other times setting up a chessboard right on the peak, and the moment they started debating sword techniques, Empress Fuyao would get annoyed and tell them to quit overstaying their welcome. Early that morning, he was at the back mountain coaching a few new disciples on their sword forms. These were the former bottom-tier servants from the third peak who had refused to follow the crowd and turn against him back in the day. Now, all of them were overflowing with spiritual energy and leveling up at a crazy pace. Suddenly, a panicked shout echoed from outside the mountain gate. A streak of light tore across the sky, diving straight toward the Wuwang Sword sect. The Empress caught the teleportation talisman, her brows furrowing the moment she read the message. Something went down at the northern continent's Xuanbing Valley. The Valley Master sent an SOS, claiming an ancient ice dragon broke its seal. The whole northern continent is about to turn into a giant ice sculpture. Upon hearing this, the Riwu Saint stood up, declaring he owed the Valley Master a debt and had to step in. He inspected the lingering aura on the talisman, muttering, "Something's off. There's demonic energy mixed in with this dragon's aura. I bet someone broke that seal on purpose." No sooner had he finished speaking than a young disciple stumbled into the sect, falling to his knees in tears. Sword God, save us. My brothers in Zhuanbing Valley are all turning into popsicles. The Valley Master got himself frozen solid just trying to protect us. With a flick of his finger, his sword turned into a golden beam of light, landing right at his feet. The Empress grabbed the disciple and followed right behind. Xuanri and Zhu Xiao, the two martial saints, exchanged a look and activated their gear to join the party. The northern continent was a total frost fest. 1,000 miles of land turned into a tundra, and the area around Zhuanbing Valley was straight-up lethal. 100-foot ice dragon coiled around the valley peak, spewing bone-chilling frost. Standing next to the dragon was a dude in a black cloak, laughing like a maniac while channeling demonic energy. The Nameless Sword God, you finally showed up. Today, I'm gonna make you taste what it's like to lose everything. The guy in the cloak ditched his mask, revealing a face that looked suspiciously like our boy. His eyes filled with pure hate. I'm the younger brother your daddy cleansed from the family records back in the day. You actually think the old man died of natural causes? I was the one who poisoned him to death. That spirit vein you've been protecting? It wasn't sealing a sword demon. It was housing the demon seed I've been feeding this whole time. He tightened his grip on his wooden sword, his killing intent exploding instantly. So, that's how it is. You've spent 10 years playing hero, but who's ever had your back? The cloaked villain cackled. Your father chose his sect over his own flesh and blood. Even your fiancé thinks you're a complete fraud. Why not just go full demon and join me in burning this fake world to the ground? The ice dragon roared and charged, turning everything in its path into frozen statues. Suddenly, he just started laughing. You don't get it. For 10 years I've been sharpening my blade, and now my sword intent is about to light up the sky. What I'm protecting isn't some sect. It's the principles my father left behind, and what I've been waiting for isn't their validation, but the path of the sword within my own heart. In the moment that golden light exploded, every bit of icy malice in the air just vanished into thin air. The ice blades shattered into pieces under the pressure of his sword intent. That demonic seed the hooded clown tried to pull off didn't even get to bloom before the Empress slapped it into oblivion. She walked over to our boy and gently dusted the snow off his robes. Don't let the wind and rain mess with your head. Weary Martial Saint stomped his foot and pinned that hooded loser straight to the ground. Daring to scheme against my nameless brother. You really are courting death. Zhu Xiao Martial Saint waved his hand and disintegrated the frost covering the Xuanbing Valley Master. The old Valley Master woke up and started bowing and thanking him like a fanboy. Thanks to the Sword God, after wrapping up business in the North Continent, he passed by the Wanjian sect on his way home, only to see the gates in ruins and the disciples looking like total losers. Turns out, after the Tianchong sect went belly up, Wanjian sect had no more backing and, because of their past antics, were blacklisted by everyone. They weren't exactly the big deal they used to be. Chen Piao Piao stood outside the gates, watching him fly away on his sword, before finally turning back into the blinding snowstorm, heading back to the Wu Wang sword sect. The junior disciples had the hot tea ready, making the cottage feel like spring in the middle of winter. Empress Fu Yao poured him some tea and teased him with a smirk. Everyone in the South Continent is calling you an uncle now, aren't they? He looked at the spirit herbs sprouting outside the window, grabbed his tea, and said, I'm still the same swordsman as before, I just don't have to wait for anything anymore. The reputation of Wu Wang sword sect blew up, but nobody dared to swing by for a visit. I mean, they've got 3 martial saints in the sect, and a nameless sword god that even martial saints are terrified of. Your average cultivator doesn't even have the guts to get within 10 miles of the third peak. Meanwhile, other sects are getting wrecked by demon cultivators and weird beasts left and right, so they constantly send out SOS letters, and our boy has never once said no. Usually, one single sword swing is all it takes to handle the trash. One day, he was chilling in the cottage, studying a new sword manual. Empress Fu Yao walked in with a plate of spirit fruit, a bit of cooking flour still on her fingertips. We just got word from the West Continent. The Zhu Xiao martial saint is having some drama back home. Someone broke into his sect's backyard, and straight up, that rock lets cultivators tap into the laws of heaven and earth, so losing it is a massive L for the sect. He sets down his manual and raises an eyebrow, wondering who the hell has the audacity to steal an enlightenment stone. Word on the street is it was a squad of guys in black robes wearing bronze masks. And their moves were straight up glitchy. They bypassed all the sect's barriers and even wrecked a few elders. The Fu family girl wipes her fingers, mentioning that Zhu Xiao martial saint is already back, and sent word that those guys reeked of a familiar demonic aura, something that feels suspiciously like those dudes we ran into in the northern province last time. He taps his fingers on the table. Looks like we failed to finish the job last time. No sooner than he says it, Xuanri martial saint barges in, holding half of a shattered bronze mask. Bro, I found this outside the gates, and the demonic energy on it is straight up cursed. He grabs the mask to inspect it, seeing it covered in creepy glowing runes on the inside. The dark energy tries to crawl up his finger, but his passive sword aura nukes it instantly. Definitely the work of the Shadow Demon Hall. That sect has been hiding out in the foggy swamps in the far west, in the southern province, living like cowards and doing shady trash. Can't believe these frauds actually dared to touch Jushao's sect. So what are we waiting for? Xuanri rubs his hands together, ready to go slap some sense into this trash and help old man Jushao settle the score. The three of them set off, but as soon as they hit the western province, they find Jushao Martial Saint pacing on a mountain peak. He sees them and rushes over like he's seen a savior. Brothers, you finally made it. Those masked clowns stole the Enlightenment Stone and dipped straight into the foggy swamps. Every disciple I sent to track them down hasn't made it back. The demonic miasma in that swamp is too cracked. I didn't want to risk catching a death sentence. He stares off at the swamp covered in black mist, and his wooden sword starts vibrating. Turns out it's not just the Shadow Demon Hall in there, but something way more annoying. As soon as he speaks, a deafening roar echoes from the swamp, and a massive black hand blocks out the sun, slamming down from the sky, with thousands of tormented souls spiraling around its fingers. The female emperor's face shifts, recognizing it. It's the soul-devouring demon dragon. I thought that thing was sealed away ages ago? The voice of the Shadow Demon Hall master booms from deep within the swamp, cackling like a total maniac. Wombing Sword God, didn't see that coming, did you? I fed this demon the souls of 1,000 cultivators just to get it this big. You killed my Shadow Demon Temple disciples and ruined my plans for the northern province. So today I'm making sure you rot in this swamp forever. As that giant black hand came crashing down, he pulled Fuyao Nudi behind him and swung his blade to meet the attack head-on. My sword exists for the sole purpose of butchering degenerates and demons like you. Golden light clashed with demonic energy, sending shockwaves ripping across the swamp's sky. The soul-devouring demon dragon let out a blood-curdling roar of pain. That giant hand got sliced open, with the sword energy cutting deep enough to see the bone. Xiaori and Zhu Xiao, the two martial saints, seized the opening to launch their spirit artifacts. Those two lethal attacks flew straight into the depths of the swamp. The master of the Shadow Demon Temple let out a pathetic scream and got sent flying. The Enlightenment Stone in his hand hit the dirt. He appeared in a blink to snatch the stone, his sword aura instantly locking the Shadow Demon Temple master in place. You got lucky last time and escaped, but your luck just hit a wall. The Shadow Demon Temple master realized he was cooked and tried to self-destruct his demonic energy to take everyone down with him. But he got shut down by the barrier that Fuyao Nudi had already set up. You really think you can pull these cheap tricks in front of me? She flicked her finger, and golden light flowed through the barrier, purifying his demonic aura bit by bit. After cleaning up the mess, Zhu Xiao Martial Saint clutched the recovered Enlightenment Stone and kept thanking him profusely. If you hadn't stepped in, my sect would have been completely wiped out. He tossed the Enlightenment Stone back to him with a wave of his hand, saying it was nothing, but I'm sure there's some bigger conspiracy behind this Shadow Demon Temple crew. On the way back, Xuanri Martial Saint suddenly slapped his thigh. Right, the Southern Province is holding the Sword Discussion Assembly next month, and every major sect is begging you to be a judge, so let's go. Actually, wait, the winner gets the seed of the Profound Heaven Immortal Vine. You could totally plant that on your third peak. He looked toward the distant Wuwang Sword sect, where his cabin was hidden in the morning mist, and smiled. Let's do it. Might as well show them. Let them see if the trash who's been holding a sword for 10 years is finally worthy of the top spot. Fuyao Nudi grabbed his hand, her eyes soft, saying, no matter where you stand, I'll be right there with you. The Southern Province Sword Discussion Assembly is held at the neutral Wangjian platform, a 1,000-foot-high stage surrounded by 72 viewing pavilions. Before the event even started, the pavilions were already packed with cultivators from every major sect. Every single conversation was obsessed with the Nameless Sword God. Some say he's a hidden ancient monster. Others guess he's the reincarnation of an ancient sword immortal. While the disciples of the 10,000 Sword sect were just cowering in the corner, terrified to even breathe too loud. When he arrived with Fuyao Nudi and his few disciples, the entire arena went dead silent. Riri Wusheng and Juxiao Wusheng were already posted up in the referee box waiting. Seeing our boy arrive, they were like, finally, the main character is here. Seriously, they were staring a hole through the referee's table. No sooner had he sat down than a white-haired elder hobbled over, trembling while holding a jade box. Sword God, I'm the sect master of the Danshan sect. You saved our medicinal fields a few days back. So please, take these Ningxin pills, they're just a small token of gratitude. No sooner had he finished than a bunch of other sect leaders swarmed in to drop off their own loot. It was turning into a literal street market, so Fujianudi just chuckled and helped him stash the gifts. At this rate, our Wuwang Sword sect is about to become the richest faction in the game. He tapped his finger on the table, his gaze locked onto the arena below. Qin Piao Piao was also in the tournament lineup. and her cultivation had actually leveled up quite a bit since 3 years ago, though her eyes were looking at him with some weird, complicated vibe. The sword conference kicked off. Disciples were jumping on stage left and right, and honestly, some of them were actually cracked. When it was Qin Piaopiao's turn, her opponent was some random scrub from the Tiangong sect. The guy was clearly salty about his sect's downfall, throwing out nothing but dirty, unhinged moves. Qin Piaopiao started struggling to hold her own. And just as she was about to get wrecked by a blast of sword energy, our boy casually flicked his finger, sending a faint ripple of sword intent that knocked the attack off course. Qin Piaopiao stood there, stunned, and looked up toward the referee's stage, locking eyes with him as he sat there looking totally unbothered. Her lips trembled for a second, but she finally gritted her teeth, sheathed her sword, and retreated, her silhouette looking all kinds of lonely. By the semifinals, a kid in black armor stood out, wielding a bizarre sword style that gave off major Yingmo Palace vibes. Riri Wuxing frowned. Something's wrong with this kid. He's got unstable demonic energy, yet he dares to join the tournament. But our boy just shook his head. The kid's foundation wasn't actually corrupted. The demonic energy was clearly forced into him by someone else. Sure enough, once the kid made it to the finals, he suddenly puked up black blood as the demonic energy went full nuclear. Everyone in the crowd freaked out and backed away, but the kid just, I can't take the L. My pops is waiting on me to snag first place so I can afford the pills to save his life. He flickered into existence, landing dead center in the arena, his wooden sword casually tapping the guy right between the eyes. 10 years of pure refined sword intent poured in like a rushing stream, instantly nuking the demonic energy into oblivion. The kid was stunned, then suddenly dropped to his knees and started kowtowing like his life depended on it. Thanks, Sword God! He hauled the kid up, saying, your sword style isn't trash, you're just way too impatient. Saying that, he pulled a tiny jade bottle out of his robe. Here are 3 Qingling pills. Take these home and get your old man fixed up. The kid gripped the jade bottle, his eyes welling up with tears. Ultimately, the championship of the Lanjian tournament went to a girl in green robes from some mid-tier sect. She accepted the Xuantian Immortal Vine Seed, sweating buckets and stressing out like crazy. Sword God, is there any chance I can make you my master? Before he could even open his mouth, the Wujia Empress beat him to it with a laugh. Our Wuwang Sword sect recruits based on heart, not just raw talent. If you're actually serious about joining, show up at the 3rd chamber tomorrow. The girl's eyes lit up like a lighthouse, and she kept bowing to thank them both. After the tourney wrapped up, the sect master of Dan Chen's sect waltzed over. Sword God, we're planning a trip to the far north frozen plains next month to hunt for ice snow lotuses. Word on the street is there's an ancient sword seed hidden out there. You down to tag along? Xuanri Marshal Saint immediately chimed in. Count me in too. Be perfect to check out those ancient sword cultivator ruins. He gazed toward the rolling sea of clouds on the horizon, his sheathed sword vibrating slightly as if hyped for the next arc. The Wujia Empress grabbed his hand, saying, go for it. The Wu Wang sword sect has defensive formations anyway. Nobody's dumb enough to try and raid us. The disciples huddled close, begging, Master, we want to go see the sword seed too. He smiled and ruffled their hair. If you want to master the sword, you gotta see the world and understand the living. And see your own true self. Let's bounce, time to go home and pack our gear. The cultivators watching from the viewing deck stared at their retreating backs. Suddenly someone whispered, who said 10 years of sword training was a waste? That right there is the real deal, a true sword god. The far north frozen plains were 1,000 miles of pure ice, where even the sunlight felt like it was trolling you with the cold. The squad looked absolutely iconic trekking across the snow. He walked in the middle with his wooden sword, while the Wujia Empress kept the curious disciples safe. Xuanri Marshal Saint and Zhuxiao Marshal Saint took the lead to scout the path. The Danchen sect master held a spirit-sensing compass, occasionally geeking out over how pure the spiritual energy was. According to the ancient records, the sword seed is deep inside the Broken Sword Valley ahead. Xuanri Wuxing pointed toward a distant icy chasm. At the entrance, you could vaguely see half of a giant sword frozen in the ice. Legend says an ancient sword cultivator kicked the bucket right here. His sword shattered into 72 pieces, scattering across the valley and spawning all kinds of rare spirit herbs. The second they stepped into the valley, the ice beneath their feet cracked. A giant wolf covered in ice crystals lunged out, its claws glowing with a murderous chill. The junior disciples panicked and scrambled behind the MC. Before our boy could even move, the Empress took the lead, flicking an icicle from her finger straight into the wolf's forehead. It was just a gatekeeping trash mob, not even at the Ningqiao realm. The wolf howled once and shattered into dust, but then a strange ringing echoed through the valley. Gold light started pulsing from beneath the ice. The Danchen sect master got hyped as he approached a block of ice. It was an ice-breaking snow lotus growing right on top of some ancient sword remains. The lore says this herb is 10 times more potent than anything we've seen. They followed the gold light deeper into the belly of the valley. The deeper they went, the more insane the sword marks on the walls became. Some of these marks were still radiating ancient sword intent. The sword aura flared up so violently that even Xuanri Wusheng had to give it props. This intent is straight up cracked. This ancient cultivator's level must have been way beyond a Wusheng. When they hit the center of the valley, a frozen sword altar appeared, with half a broken blade jammed into it, covered in mysterious glowing runes. As soon as our boy got close, the broken sword started vibrating, resonating with the wooden sword on his back. The gold light under the ice surged like a tide, manifesting a phantom projection in the air. It was a sword cultivator in white, looking all gloomy, whispering, "After 1,000 years, I've finally found someone worthy of drawing the void." The phantom spoke, his voice sounding like it was being dragged through the fabric of time. "I am the Lord of the Broken Sword Valley. I drained all my cultivation to seal the abyssal demon chi before I passed on. That wooden sword you're carrying is the physical manifestation of my own sword soul." The MC was shook. No wonder that wooden sword took 10 years just to unsheath. Turns out it was hiding an ancient sword soul the whole time. The phantom raised his hand, and the broken blade on the altar turned into a streak of light, merging with the MC's wooden sword. The wooden sword instantly exploded with a blinding gold glow. 10 years of pent-up sword intent fused with the ancient soul, creating a legit sword domain around our boy. The projection's voice started fading, as he warned that the abyssal demon chi was showing signs of waking up. "The sword soul has accepted its master, so I'm passing this sword domain down to you. Remember, kid, the Tao of the sword isn't just about catching bodies, it's about protection." As soon as the words left his mouth, the phantom dissolved into golden light. The ice in the Broken Sword Valley started to melt away, revealing 72 pieces of sword spirit buried deep underneath. Every single shard was pulsing with raw, heavenly energy. The Danchen sect master looked absolutely shook, while Marshal Saint Xuanri kept his eyes on the entrance. Uh-oh, the demonic energy is actually here. The snow at the valley entrance started turning pitch black. A foul stench filled the air as countless twisted shadows crawled out from the ground. Leading the charge was a demon general decked out in bone armor. He was waving a bone blade and laughing like a maniac, saying he'd finally waited for the sword soul inheritance to end. "Anonymous Sword God, today you and this sword seed are getting buried together." Our boy gripped his wooden sword tight, instantly activating his sword domain. Wherever that golden light touched, those shadows got deleted. I didn't wipe out the demon palace last time, and now it brought a bigger fish. Empress Fu Yao and the two martial saints immediately formed a formation to protect the juniors and the Dan Chen sect master. Sword energy and demonic mist clashed in the valley, shattering the ice into a million pieces. That demon general clearly came prepared, pulling out a black flag covered in wailing souls. With one wave of the flag, a wave of dark killing intent started invading the sword domain. His eyes turned ice cold as he raised his sword high, fusing 10 years of tempering his blade with the dominance of the ancient sword soul. "I've tempered this blade 1,000 times just to cut down trash like you," he shouted, as golden light poured down like a waterfall. The black flag shattered into confetti inside the sword domain. The demon general let out a pathetic scream before the sword energy turned him into literal dust. The rest of the mobs realized they were cooked and tried to run, but Marshal Saint Xuanri and the others blocked their path. With a flash of sword light, peace finally returned to the Broken Sword Valley. Once the ice cleared, the valley revealed the spirit veins hidden beneath. The 72 sword spirit shards were embedded in the veins, constantly radiating spirit energy. He split the shards among everyone. These things are perfect for stabilizing cultivation and leveling up the juniors of the Wuwang sword sect. The Dan Chen sect master held the snow lotus like a winning lottery ticket, grinning like an idiot. "What a haul. Once I get back, I'm cooking up a batch of sword heart pills that will guarantee a breakthrough for the brothers." On the way back, the juniors were geeking out over their shards, discussing which sword techniques to grind next. Empress Fu Yao walked up to him, eyeing the wooden sword that was still faintly glowing in his hand. "I guess you could say this sword is finally complete now, right?" He looked toward the distant Wuwang sword sect, where the air was thick with spirit energy. Now that the sword is whole, the wooden sword hummed, clearly feeling the vibe. The legacy at the Sword Valley wasn't some finale, it was just the prologue. The legend of the Nameless Sword God would keep growing in this massive world, fueled by a wooden sword that's been grinding for a decade. As for all the hate and clout chasing from back in the day, that's all just dust in the wind, long forgotten under the edge of his blade. Back at the Wuwang sword sect, the spirit fields of the third peak were finally sprouting, green shoots of spirit grain planted by the OGs who stayed behind. He buried the sword spirit shards he brought back from the Sword Valley into the fields. A few days later, the banks were popping off with glowing sword grass. When the leaves moved, they sounded like ringing blades, drawing every noob in the sect to come watch. The sect master of the Danshen sect snatched up the snow lotus and dipped, heading back to cook up some pills. Before taking off, he shoved a communication talisman into our boy's hand. Once I'm done, this sword heart pill will hit you up. This elixir is a game changer for your sword soul. It'll basically speedrun your way to the semi-immortal realm. Meanwhile, Shuari Martial Saint and Jushao Martial Saint opened a sword debate hall at the peak. They were basically trapping every cultivator passing by to see if they could actually fight, all under the excuse of grinding reputation for the Wuwang sword sect. One day, he was just chilling in his hut, polishing a sword. The Fu family empress walked in, rocking a gold-plated invite, her finger tapping the seal on the card. The Heavenly Sword Alliance from the Central Plains sent an invite, asking him to pull up to their century-tier Sword Seed Gala. Word is, this event is going to crown a Lord of 10,000 Swords who can boss around every sword cultivator in existence. Plus, they're unlocking an ancient sword realm. His hand froze mid-polish. So, the Heavenly Sword Alliance is really out here, acting like they own every sword user in the Central Plains? It's not just that, the Fu family empress said with a smirk. Their leader is a total boomer relic who spent his life hoarding thousands of ancient blades, so if he's inviting you, he definitely has some shady ulterior motives. Word on the street is the Immortal Severing Sword, their sect's main flex, went missing. They're pinning it on the demonic cultivators. And they want you, the Nameless Sword God, to play detective and track it down. Right on cue, Xuanrui Martial Saint started yelling from outside the sect gates. Bro, the people from the Central Plains are here. They're at the foot of the mountain, and they're demanding to see you personally. He stood up, and his wooden sword gave a subtle shudder, reflecting a familiar aura of demonic energy. It was the exact same vibe as the demon general from the Sword Valley. Looks like skipping this Sword Seed Gala is no longer an option. He's got a sword strapped to his back, heading out to see if the stolen immortal slaying sword is actually some leftover tech from the Abyss Demon Clan. 3 days later, they hopped on a flying ship bound for the central region. As they were cruising through the sea of clouds, the little disciple freaked out. Master, look! There are literally thousands of flying swords down there. Turns out, the sky above the central region was swarming with flying blades, and the sword aura was absolutely cracked, definitely living up to the hype as the holy land for sword cultivators. The Heavenly Sword Alliance's base was built on a floating island, held up by tens of thousands of ancient swords. From a distance, the whole place looked like a literal mountain of blades. The Alliance leader came out to the front gate personally to greet them, looking like some old sage, but when his eyes landed on the wooden sword on our boy's back, he looked shook. The Sword God's sword is just a wooden stick? He shrugged. If it can cut down demons, it's a good sword. During the banquet, every sword cultivator from every sect kept coming over to toast, but the talk was always about the missing immortal slaying sword. The great elder of the Heavenly Sword Alliance let out a heavy sigh and said, the immortal slaying sword was the only thing keeping that demonic energy in check. The second it went missing, the demonic energy at the border started acting up. A bunch of small fry sects have already gotten wiped out. He tapped his finger against his wine cup. When it went missing, did you see anything weird? The elder rushed to reply. The disciple on guard duty said he saw a shadow zoom by that night. Speed was insane, literally faster than a sword, and it left this behind. He pulled out a broken sword shard covered in some nasty black gunk. As soon as that black stuff touched spirit energy, it started hissing like crazy. It was the signature mark of Abyss Demon energy. Late that night, he rolled up solo to the ruins of the sword storage pavilion. The wooden sword suddenly pointed straight at a cliff face. He swiped his hand, slicing the cliff wide open to reveal a pitch-black cave entrance. The carvings on the walls were identical to the runes on that bone armor from the demon general back at Great Sword Valley. Called it, the Abyss Demon Clan is definitely behind this. Just as he was about to head in, he noticed the Empress's avatar trailing him. I knew you'd come here to investigate, big brain. The two of them followed the demonic scent deep into the underground. Finally, they reached a hidden altar. Stuck right in the middle was the immortal slaying sword. The blade was wrapped in creepy black bones, and you could practically hear the souls of the damned screaming inside them. Standing right next to the altar was some guy draped in a black cloak. He turned around, revealing a face covered in gross, scaly skin. The Nameless Sword God, we meet again. Our guy recognized the Abyss Envoy immediately. The aura was the exact same as that demon general from Broken Sword Valley. So, you're using the immortal slaying sword to resurrect the Abyss Spirit Lord. The cloaked weirdo let out a crazed laugh. You guessed it. Once the Lord wakes up, this whole world is going to be our personal playground. You really thought the legacy inside Broken Sword Valley was a blessing? It was nothing but a trap laid out by that pathetic Spirit Lord. The stronger your sword soul gets, the more juice you provide for the sacrifice. No sooner had he finished speaking than the immortal slashing sword on the altar erupted with black, demonic miasma. The black mist morphed into a massive beast, lunging straight for the crowd. Our boy yanked the Fu Empress behind his back and swung his sword, meeting the darkness head-on. You're wrong. The true path of the sword was never about a trap, it's about protection. 10 years of grinding his blade fused with the ancient sword soul, triggering a golden explosion, bright as the sun that vaporized the black mist instantly. The hooded freak scrambled back, absolutely shook. No way. How is your sword power doing that? Because this blade holds everything I've sworn to protect. He stepped forward, driving his wooden sword straight through the hooded guy's chest until he turned to ash, leaving behind only a dark magic core. The black gunk on the immortal slashing sword faded, revealing its original blinding brilliance. He grabbed the hilt and pulled it free. The blade hummed in perfect resonance with his wooden sword, singing a crisp, sharp melody. Back on the surface, the Heavenly Sword Alliance leader and the rest of the gang were stressing out while they waited. Seeing our boy return in one piece while lugging the immortal slashing sword along, they were absolutely losing their minds with joy. The sword god is truly built different. He handed back the immortal slashing sword and warned them that while the demon scraps were cleared, the Abyss Spirit Lord is likely waking up soon, so they need to prep ASAP. The Alliance leader nodded frantically, promising to announce the news at tomorrow's Sword Seed Assembly so every sword cultivator can unite against the demon threat. Late that night at the Sword Storage Pavilion ruins, the wooden sword and the immortal slashing sword rested side by side, their twin auras shimmering in the dark. The Fu Empress leaned on his shoulder, asking, "So, are we going to slice up that Abyss Spirit Lord next?" He stared out the window at the endless sky as his wooden sword vibrated. First, he had to show the world what the real sword path was all about. Moonlight reflected off the steel, mirroring the iron resolve in his eyes, from a total loser who couldn't even draw his blade, to a sword god protecting the realm. 10 years of solitude didn't just sharpen his blade, it forged a heart of steel dedicated to protecting all life. And the coming calamity would be the ultimate test for that original vow. On the day of the Sword Seed Assembly, the 10,000 sword stage was packed to the brim with cultivators. The Heavenly Sword Alliance leader stepped onto the platform, gripping the immortal slashing sword tight. He laid out everything they discovered the night before for the whole crowd to hear. When the news dropped that the Abyss Spirit Lord might be waking up, the entire place went into absolute chaos. The Alliance leader held the sword high and shouted, "Today, we aren't just choosing a new master, we're whoever can shoulder this heavy burden. Please step up and claim the immortal slaying sword. Become the leader of all sword cultivators under the heavens." The crowd went dead silent, with every pair of eyes locked onto the stage. Xianri Wusheng was the first to speak up, claiming that Brother Wuming is the most qualified candidate. Zhuxiao Wusheng immediately backed him up, saying that when it comes to raw power and moral integrity, no one deserves the title of swordmaster more than this guy. He walked onto the stage, but instead of taking the immortal slaying sword, he pulled out the wooden sword strapped to his back. "This sword has been with me for 10 years, and for the last decade, I have used it to protect the sect, save commoners, and slaughter demonic cultivators. The sword path, I have realized, was never about ruling over people, but about protecting them." He shoved the wooden sword into the sword mount in the center of the stage, declaring that if we are picking a sword master, we should choose a blade that brings peace to the world. "This wooden sword stays here today. Whoever can draw it with a pure heart, that person shall be the true sword master." As soon as he finished, the wooden sword suddenly erupted with a golden glow. Within the golden light, countless images began to flicker, showing him training his sword at the third peak, showing him transforming into the Nameless Sword God to save others, and showing him standing firm against the demon race. The entire crowd watched these scenes, and everyone was moved to tears. The leader of the Heavenly Sword Alliance was the first to step up and try to draw it, but the blade didn't budge an inch, even as several famous veteran sword cultivators took their turns trying. The wooden sword remained firmly locked in the mount. When it was Qin Piao Piao's turn, she stared at the wooden sword and hesitated for a long time before finally pulling her hand back. She knew deep down she no longer had the right to touch this sword. Just when everyone thought it was impossible to draw, a ragged-looking kid shoved his way through the crowd. He was a refugee orphan from the border, still clutching half of a broken blade in his hand. "Can I give it a try?" The kid was trembling with nerves, saying he just wanted to protect his little sisters back at the border. The moment he gripped the wooden sword, the golden light suddenly calmed down. The sword was drawn out with ease, leaving the entire arena in stunned silence before it erupted into thunderous applause. The kid just stood there, holding the wooden sword, not knowing what to do. He walked over and patted the kid's head, telling him to practice his swordplay well. "From now on, the future of this world is in your hands." After the ceremony ended, the sword cultivators spontaneously formed the Sword Protector Alliance. He might not be the 10,000 sword sovereign anymore, but he's basically the emotional anchor for everyone now. Every major sect is rushing to set up defenses at the border. The pillheads over at Dan Chen's sect are pumping out elixirs to the front lines like crazy, and even the Wanjian sect decided to show up and help. Whenever Qin Piao Piao goes demon hunting at the border, everyone sees this ghostly sword shadow protecting her from the back. 3 months later, the abyss rift in the northern continent rips open, and an army of demons comes pouring out. Just as he arrives with the Fuyao Empress, 2 martial saints, and the young sword sovereign prodigy, a 100-foot-tall abyss spirit lord crawls out of the rift like it owns the place. The demonic aura is straight up blotting out the sun, and the thing roars, "Wuzhong Sword God, today is the day you die." Wait, it actually said that. The spirit lord slams its claw down, and the entire mountain range just collapses like a house of cards. He hands his sword to the kid and says, "Watch closely. This is what a real sword strike looks like." Then he blinks, and 10 years of sword intent mixed with an ancient sword soul absolutely pops off. The world turns into a single beam of golden light. He fuses with the sword to meet the demonic claw, screaming, "With this sword soul, I'm ending your pathetic demonic reign." After a deafening boom, the demonic claw gets vaporized in that golden radiance. The abyss spirit lord lets out a screech that sounds like a dying banshee. Its massive body gets sliced clean in half by the raw sword energy. The dark demonic smog in the rift starts to dissipate. The spiritual energy in the atmosphere finally starts flowing again. The kid is holding the sword, eyes sparkling. "I get it now. Sword Dao isn't just about power, it's about having the guts to stand your ground." After the dust settled, the abyss rift got sealed by the immortal slaying sword, and the world finally got some peace and quiet. He headed back to Wu Wang Sword Sect to keep teaching the newbies how to swing swords at the back mountain. Time just kept ticking by, and while the sect's fame faded, they managed to keep their vibe pure. The spiritual peak at Dian Sanfeng started growing these rare Dao grains that actually produce liquid sword energy. You've got a bunch of new disciples sitting by the waterfall in the back, grinding their sword skills. On the stone table in front of the shack, there's always a fresh pot of spirit tea brewed by the Fuyao Empress. Early that morning, he was busy coaching the young sword sovereign on his form. The kid's not a rookie anymore. His swordplay actually has that heavy protective weight to it now. Suddenly, a crane swoops down from the sky with a scroll tied to its leg. It's got the flaming seal of the Danchen sect, definitely a message from the old alchemist. He cracks it open to find a bottle of sword heart pills, and a note about an ancient pill furnace discovered in the north, and it's probably tied to the abyss demons again. The note just says, "Get here fast." The young sword sovereign immediately grips his hilt, ready to throw hands. "Master, I'm coming with you." The lady from the Fu family stepped out of the thatched hut, condensing a maple leaf seal right at her fingertips. Tuinat and Chu Tiu already got the intel and are currently camping out for us at the northern continent border. The demonic mist in the north has cleared up, but it left behind some serious scars on the land. They found the sect master of the Dan Then sect chilling in a collapsed valley, literally circling a pill furnace like a creep. The demonic runes on that furnace look exactly like the ones on the Abyss Spirit Lord. And let's be real, that's not a pill inside, that's a soul factory. The old fraud is busy pointing at the black smog pouring out of the furnace opening. I checked it out, and it's sealing tens of thousands of souls. He's trying to cook up a demon pill to revive the entire demon race. Before he could even finish his monologue, the furnace started tweaking out. The lid blew off, and a shadow figure shot out like a rocket. It's a demonic cultivator rocking a bone fan. Dude looks like a K-pop star, but gives off massive main villain energy. Oh, the Nameless Sword God finally showed up? Perfect. Time to catch a taste of my soul-killing array. He whipped that bone fan, and a literal army of screaming souls surged toward our heroes. The young Wanjian Lord went for a full-send sword strike, but the ghost just swarmed him, locking him in place. He frowned, his wooden sword flashing with golden light, declaring, "After 10 years of grinding, my blade is here to slice frauds like you." Wherever that golden light touched, the ghosts evaporated, revealing a nasty formation carved into the base of the furnace. The Fu family lady condensed ice daggers, shouting, "That's a soul-gathering array. You're gonna need some high-tier young sword energy to crack it." He took a deep breath, merging his decade of sword mastery with his ancient sword soul, turning his aura into a literal blazing sun. "With my heart as the blade, I burn away all evil." The sun crashed down, shattering the furnace into golden dust. The demon cultivator shrieked as sword energy ventilated him into nothing but ashes. All the remaining souls trapped in the furnace were finally released, turning into glowing lights drifting into the sky. The old alchemy guy wiped his forehead, muttering, "Close one. If we were a second later, that demon pill would have been a wrap." The young Wanjin Lord stared at the fading lights, and suddenly said, "Master, I get it now. Protecting people isn't just about swinging a sword, it's about giving these souls peace." He smiled and nodded. "The sword path isn't just for killing, kid, it's for salvation too." On the way back, passing through a small border town, the village that got clapped by demons was already being rebuilt. Kids were out there playing tag in the fields. The elders were just vibing and soaking up the sun in the courtyard. Seeing them pass, the villagers brought out fruit, shouting, "Big thanks to the sword god for keeping us safe." The young Wanjian lord held the wild fruit, finally understanding why he spent 10 lonely years grinding on the third peak. True strength was never about standing at the top just to have people worship you. It's about making sure the people live just to put everyone at ease. By the time he returned to Wuwang Sword Sect, the sunset was already bleeding across the horizon. On the stone table in front of the hut, the spirit tea was still steaming. The Fu family empress and a few disciples were busy sorting herbs. Marshal Saint Xiaori and Marshal Saint Juxiao were out here sparring on the mountain peak. Their sword intent tore the evening clouds apart, leaving the disciples absolutely shook. He propped his wooden sword against the stone table and took a cup of tea from the empress. Amidst the swirling tea fragrance, the wooden sword hummed like it was spilling the tea on the last 10 years. From a total bottom feeder that nobody cared about to the sword god protecting the realm, the loneliness of grinding solo finally turned into a gentle heart that protects all living things. The young sword master of 10,000 blades walked up to him, gazing at the sunset. "Master, one day I also want to use my sword to protect the world just like you." He looked into those starry eyes and saw his own younger self from 10 years ago, grinding on the third peak, and whispered, "Bet, we'll do it together." The evening breeze blew across the spirit fields, and the sword grass rustled as if hyping up this legendary story. And the greenwood sword that's been grinding for 10 years lay quietly under the moonlight, with golden light rippling across its blade, hiding a story of pure hustle and protection that's still far from over. Let's go!